I uploaded a video a couple of months ago about the best ways to shorten or conceal your laces, in which I included these shoes. And as several people correctly noticed, these are pretty battered, to the extent where I'm probably going to replace them soon. And that gave me the idea for this video, because when do you replace your shoes? Well, in this video, I'm going to show you some obvious signs to look out for that may indicate that your shoes are wearing out and might need replacing, as well as a couple of hints and tips that may make your shoes last a bit longer next time. Let's begin with some obvious signs. One of the first things to look out for is the sole of the shoe wearing down. The more you walk in the shoes, the more erosion is going to take place, and it's going to slowly start chipping away at the bottom of your shoes. The rate at which this happens will depend on the quality of the sole of the shoe, and also the type of material that's used, which we'll talk about later. You'll usually notice the most wear around the heel area and also underneath the balls of your feet. These areas will eventually become really thin and may even start forming holes. If it's at the extent where you've got holes in your shoes, they probably need replacing. Another common sight is the sole of the shoe peeling away from the main body. This is more commonly seen in low-cost shoes where the sole has been glued onto the upper. Over time, that adhesive is going to lose its potency and the sole may start folding away. If you can see your toes poking out, you know it's time to get them changed. That being said, for both of those issues, things can be a little bit different if you've got leather-soled shoes, because with the vast majority of these, if you start to experience severe wear on the bottom of the shoe, you can get these resoled, something that's quite rare with the majority of rubber-soled shoes. Another sign that your shoes might need replacing is if they're letting in water. If you're in torrential rain, this probably can't be helped. However, if it's light and you can feel your feet getting soaked, there's likely a hole somewhere in the shoe. If water is getting in through the upper of the material itself, then this can be somewhat prevented using protector sprays. I'll link to one of those in the video description. They're a pretty useful thing to have. If it's a leather-soled shoe that you've got, then you need to be aware that these will let water in through the sole, because these really like to soak up water like a sponge. Your shoes may also need replacing if you see split leather. This typically happens with more low-end shoes and trainers that have a lower quality grade of leather. You can see that on these Adidas shoes. This normally occurs in the places that the material folds, which normally starts around the toe area. Often this damage will get really substantial and the material will start getting really thin. Generally, higher quality leathers will last longer in this regard, many of which can actually start to look better as the leather ages. But for lower cost shoes like these, that's not really the case. Another thing to look out for is material discoloration. Now this can occur for a variety of reasons. Really, I see two main things. The first one being some sort of discoloration around the tongue, often caused by wearing denim jeans, which, especially in wet conditions, can leave a residue. You can see the slight blue tinge to these trainers at the top. Some of these stains can be removed, but others are really hard to get out. And if this increases, you're left with a shoe that's got a weird color at the top. The second type of discoloration I see a lot is due to light exposure. Now this one's pretty self-explanatory. If your shoes are in direct light, they're going to start fading. To keep things looking even between your shoes, try and ensure that both are stored in the same light environment, ideally somewhere that's out of direct light. Another thing that you may not necessarily be able to see, but that you will feel, is the lining of the shoe, because the more that you wear your shoes, the more that you're going to erode away the lining. This is really noticeable in shoes that have got a fabric lining, as these will normally wear away quicker than those with a leather lining. With these shoes, for instance, there is some wear around where my little toe sits, which will not only make the shoe more uncomfortable, but could potentially result in more water being able to get into the shoe. And while we're talking about moisture, let's talk about mold, which is a trouble that I have to face in this house because we do have some damp issues. If your shoes are stored in damp conditions, usually you'll have trouble when it comes to mold on your shoes, whether this be the upper of the shoe or the sole. Sometimes this can be removed, but I often find even when you remove it, it still seems to recur. If you can prevent this from happening in the first place, that's your best bet. Another clear sign that it might be time to replace your shoes is not particularly to do with your shoes, it's to do with your body. Because if you find that your feet are hurting more or your legs are hurting more, it could be down to your shoes. Especially when certain areas of the shoes are worn down more than they should be, can result in you not walking properly or not having the correct amount of support inside your shoes. And there isn't much worse than an uncomfortable pair of shoes. Now I want to go over some general principles to look for when choosing shoes or when considering replacing them. The first one is that generally more premium shoes tend to last longer. And I mean premium here as in higher quality. Price isn't always representative of quality, but generally the more that you pay, you tend to get higher quality in most cases. Better quality leather, linings, and soles are only going to benefit you, and will generally mean that you can hang off replacing your shoes for a bit longer. There is one specific thing I wanted to mention here as well. The fake leather, the polyurethane that you see loads of cheap shoes made out of, that stuff is terrible. Shoes made out of this material may be much lower price point, but they get absolutely destroyed really fast. Often with the upper of the shoe peeling away, it's not worth spending that little on a pair of shoes. In the long run, you're going to have to keep replacing them, so it works out as more expensive. Also, I want to point out the real advantage that is leather-lined shoes. You'll struggle to find this on low-end shoes, but the advantage of leather-lined shoes over fabric shoes for most people is just enormous. When I'm wearing my shoes, the first thing that I often have problems with is the lining, even before the sole and the heel. Also in this video, I have mentioned two different soles of shoes. Shoes with leather soles will generally be more expensive to buy, and actually won't last as long as rubber shoes in most cases. They tend to wear down quite quickly, but they can be replaced. Whereas with most fused rubber shoes, you just have to chuck them. Many leather-soled shoes will also come with welted construction, which can add to water resistance and will preserve the shoe structure for longer, meaning you don't have to replace them quite as often. So if you're in the market for leather-soled shoes, then keep an eye out for that. When storing your shoes, these can be really important as well. For quite a low cost, shoe trees can actually really help when it comes to reducing the amount of creases. Just pop them in your shoes when you're not wearing them, and it keeps the material tight and prevents the shoe from staying folded and creased for a longer amount of time. These aren't expensive, and they also make it easier to clean your shoes as well. So I'd certainly recommend getting some of these, whether it's the wood ones or just the cheap plastic ones. This will ensure that you don't have to replace your shoes as often due to this heavy creasing. And I have mentioned storing things away from direct sunlight, which is important, but also you need to maintain airflow, especially when you've got rubber-soled shoes. I used to work at a shoe shop and saw loads of guys bringing in shoes with soles that had just completely been destroyed due to a process called hydrolysis, where the shoes had been in sealed containers for ages, and the rubber sole had essentially just dried up so much that it was crumbling away, and the leather was really damaged. Just like you, your shoes need to breathe, so ensure that they've got some sort of airflow. And the final thing is moisturizing your shoes is really important. Just like with your skin, the drier it gets, often the worse it gets. The splitting of the leather, as I mentioned earlier, is only going to happen faster if your shoes are really dry all the time. This is extra important in warm environments, so occasionally using some sort of moisturizing balm is going to be helpful. But I went into much more detail on those sorts of things in a video I did a couple of years back, but I'll link it in the iCards anyway so you can watch it next. And you'll have to let me know in the comments if you want to see an updated version of that one. Also, let me know in the comments if you think that there is anything I missed on this one. I'm sure there probably is, but there's so much to cover with this topic, it's difficult for me to remember. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, press the like button, subscribe for more handy tips just like this one, and I'll see you in the next video.